Hello, I'm Heather. I'm a serial entrepreneur, content creator, author, and woman with many passions and interests. I created this podcast, Live, Learn, Leverage, for those who are ready to get out of the box. This is a safe space to live freely and authentically. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Live, Learn, Leverage. Today, I have an extraordinary special guest because for so many of us, we're going through a number of transitions. And when I had the pleasure of meeting Anna and I was hearing her story and so many of the things that she shared, it occurred to me the value that her wisdom, the challenges, and everything that she has experienced and overcome would be able to just share and prove valuable to all of you. So I wanted to just take a moment to quickly introduce Anna. So happy that she's able to be here today. Thank you so very much for gracing us with your presence.
Oh, thank you.
And so, yes, so Anna is a life and spiritual coach, speaker, and intuitive guide whose work focuses on healing, identity, and human potential. Through her framework, The 5 Facets of Healing, she helps people understand themselves more deeply so they can move through life with greater alignment, clarity, and purpose. So I am super excited to have you here today, Anna. Thank you so very much, because I feel like for so much of my audience, they are feeling, like, what is next? They're going through transition, reinvention, and there's so many questions. Welcome to Live, Learn, Leverage. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and hosting me. And I am excited to be here and to join you and to serve you and your community.
Awesome. Thank you. So I have a couple questions, but I mean, again, right? It's all about just sharing what we're called to share. I genuinely believe that. I am not a heavily structured person, but much of, if not all of what you do focuses on healing. And for so many people, they are going through struggles that they're not able to articulate. In my book, Create Your Own Table, A Guide to Discovering Your Purpose, one of the things that I speak about, I actually have an entire dedicated to sometimes you have to go back to move forward and address all those things. We know we're having feelings, we're having thoughts, but we're not certain what that next step is. So if you could guide us to why you even came to do this work and why we're here today, and yes, this journey that has brought us together.
Right. Okay, so that's a tall order, and I'm really grateful. As you mentioned before the call, it's just a casual conversation, and I have been pioneering new conversations around ultimately what human healing and potential is for over 20 years. My stories, like so many of all of us, were born, my growth, my evolution, the way I show up and serve was born out of loss. I have always been a helper, even as a little girl. And I had a 7-year string of significant life loss events that really showed me how I really wanted to show up in the world and support people. And one of the things that I've discovered is I call it our next level potential, whatever that is. And I look at healing as micro moments. And when we're facing any kind of conflict or struggle, can be very unempowering. Yeah. And so all of my conversations are around how do we heal that conflict, struggle, grief, whatever term you want to assign to that, so that we can move forward to achieve what is next. If we're in deep grief, what we typically want is to feel better.
Sure.
And so how can that next level potential is feeling better? If it's in business, leading ourselves and others, what's the next level potential in leading my team? How can I, to use your term, and I love that, leverage, how can we leverage what we have? And so going back just a little bit, the 7-year string of losses, it started with the unexpected death of my firstborn son following unexpected delivery complications. He actually, yesterday was his birth and death day. All the work that I do celebrates him. Hours after I heard those words, "I'm sorry he didn't make it," I had this distinct thought that I didn't want to spend a lifetime mourning him. And what I say at the time, I didn't know what that meant, what it looked like on the other side, or how I was going to get there. But a seed had been planted. And over the next 6 years and 10 months, I had 2 second trimester miscarriages, 2 complicated but successful pregnancies, a 6-week psychiatric stay for severe depression, and one final pregnancy. 6 weeks before that child was born, I discovered my husband and my best friend were having an affair. And during that 7-year string of losses, there was a question that drove me forward. And that was, how is it that some people go on to live happy, fulfilled lives following tragedy, mishap, or mayhem, while others succumb to drugs, despair, or a life of, or suicide, a life of void or suicide? And ultimately, coming back to what I said at the beginning, I wasn't able to articulate it at the time, but what I was really seeking, I knew deep in my core, I had seen evidence of it, heard stories that people who had transcended what others would deem unimaginable and something you would never get over. And so I knew that. And that one question spawned thousands more. I relentlessly pursued the answers to what is it? What is it within each of us? Because I did believe, and I still do believe we all have that ability within us. And ultimately, what revealed itself over years is what I now call the 5 facets framework. And that is, we are all born with 5 universal gifts. They're the same for all of us. They're the same facets. It's just the details that comprise them are different. So it's the academic facet, which is an ability to learn. The emotional facet is the ability to feel, to respond to some external stimuli. The physical facet is 2-pronged. We're born into a physical body and a physical environment. And we have the social facet, which is the ability to connect to the world around us. And that's the world at large. It's people. I'm a big alliteration fan. So people, pets, plants, places, and passion. And I always use the example, you may have encountered someone in your life that has said, "I'd much rather hang out with a dog than a human." And so how we relate then is different, but we all have that ability to connect. And then the spiritual facet is the divine self within, the soul, the spirit, what the part of us that knows our hopes and dreams, that what makes us really feel alive. And so how we go from the collective then, as I continued to explore it, each one of us is born with our own unique hierarchy of those facets. And those facets in varying degrees based on where they are in your hierarchy, they literally are the lens from which you see and experience life. And where many frameworks look at behaviors and patterns, this model actually is what sits underneath those. It's what is driving and influencing those patterns and behaviors that we adopt as humans.
So I have one big question that keeps coming to me.
Yeah.
And granted, at this point, you've had the benefit of time, but I could hear as you shared, you listed a number of things that one of those things could take someone out, much less all of them together in succession over a period like that, because it then becomes very, it's like, how do I endure? And I could hear people even being like, 7 years, if this happened just one time. So my first question is, when you were in this, what were those steps that for those people who may be in the middle of any one of these right now, and they're feeling like tomorrow is just the idea of tomorrow is inconceivable, much less even having the evolution that you've had. So just to, if there are, were there certain things, did this, and you did say, yes, the healing did take time, but on a step-by-step, year-by-year basis even, was there an evolution that, or feelings, or things that you read, or things that you did, or just an awareness that you had that made you feel that I will survive this? I mean, I can't even imagine the passing of your son, like, what that would have done to your own spirit in that time. And again, thinking about people who are in this right now who can't conceive being where you are.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I would like to expand that even further outside of just my experiences. Somebody who's had a job loss or is not happy where they are and they're really struggling. Do I leave this and start something fresh? Somebody who's going through a divorce, people who are experiencing estrangement right now from family members, and some diagnosis, a health diagnosis. And so if someone who's watching, if their loss event isn't the same as mine, but it feels really significant to them, and they're wondering, how am I going to go one more day or one more hour? The first thing that I say is, number one, hold on to hope. Light always follows the darkness. And it can be really challenging to see that. Some of the things that I did, and this is going to be different for every single person, but one of the things that I did during that period was I journaled relentlessly. Sometimes I would journal for an hour or more a day. That served two purposes for me at the time, and also looking back, seeing how it benefited me. One, I was able to get those toxic feelings and thoughts and emotions and the screaming and the doubt and the anxiety. I was just able to purge it and put it on paper. The other thing, though, is as I would look back, as I would write a journal entry, and I would start to write one, and I would look back to see what I had already written. And I would frequently see where I had wrote about something funny one of my children said or did, or something that I heard that made me laugh at the grocery store, or a joke that I saw on an office somewhere. And what I realized is, in that moment, those micro moments, as I call them, they were giving me moments of peace and what I call moments of healing.
Yes.
And the new conversations that I've been pioneering for over 20 years around conflict and grief, because I believe that they're very synonymous. And I actually have a belief that so far has not been debunked, and that is all conflict stems from some unresolved grief due to a significant life loss event, whatever that was for you. And so we tend to look at healing like we do happiness subconsciously. I'll be happy when I get the job, I get the man or the girl or the car or the house or the raise or the promotion. Insert
the external factor.
Yep. And subconsciously, we also tend to think, oh, I will be healed when I get the job. I figure it out. I have clarity. I'm not crying every day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, depending on what you're experiencing in the moment. But the truth is, healing happens in micro moments. It's not a destination. So every time we're struggling and we have a moment of clarity, that's a healing moment. Every time we're feeling sad or blue and someone makes us smile, that's a healing moment. if we're feeling unseen, unvalidated, and somebody smiles at us and opens the door and says, before you or after you, those are healing moments. And you hear this in mental health and self-development work all the time. It's celebrate those wins. And to me, celebrate the micro wins. To me, those healing moments are wins. And if we can somehow remember them, I believe that helps us. So the other thing I used to do is I used to write smiley faces or hearts in my paper day planner, and I still use it. Or I would write, if I didn't have time to journal, I would write that win in my calendar. And I still do that
I
because
feel like I have to show you these.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I get it. This
Yes.
is not even half.
Right. I
They're
know.
right here because I'm like that
stacks of them.
reminder, right? That
Mhm.
reminder, granted it's different, but it's getting those thoughts out. Just getting it out. But what you just said about a reflection, because even when I went to write my most recent book, I'm sitting feeling so overwhelmed. I'm like, I need to share stuff. And I was like, Heather, what are all those thoughts that you've had before? Just go through.
Mhm.
I forgot that I had intended to write that book the day, but I wrote a date,
Mhm.
and I believe it was February 4th or something like that. I think it's right here somewhere. But it was like on
Yep.
February. No, it was February 1st. You are going to write a book that addresses the pain points of your customer. It was right in here. I opened it up. I was like, I am. Right. And
Yep.
then and then I was like, oh my goodness, it's February 3rd. I'm 2 days late. I started writing the next day because it just brought me back. It kept me accountable. And that was something that I actually wrote the 7 months before in July or 8 months. And now, whatever, that was
Okay.
July,
Oh, wow.
right? I
Yeah.
wrote it in July that on February 1st, I'm going to do this. And on February 3rd, I opened the journal and there it was. But I also love the other thing that you said. These are the micro moments, healing being brought in micro moments. I always say, it's the small things that add up. Those little things can bring you so much joy because we can do them easily and with consistency. And I think a lot of people don't realize the changes that happen in those little moments also, to your point, because they're waiting for the big thing, like this big grandiose. They're looking for the big maneuver, the big everything, and not feeling as though they've achieved anything because they didn't see the big thing, not realizing that it's like compounding interest, right?
Yeah.
Just a little bit over time,
Yeah.
and that it
Absolutely.
compounds into something meaningful.
And not everybody will journal. So ultimately, my journals have become a form of research for me because I do expand on what I have. And so it is a form of reference, remembrance, and research for me. There are many people, though, who don't want to write in long form. Again, making that note in your phone, if you use notes, or setting a reminder, or one of the other things that I offer to people I work with is take a Post-it note, stick it on your mirror, stick it on the dash of your car, stick it on this. I oftentimes will stick something on the side of my computer if I really want, and I'll put that Post-it note there.
Seriously, like hello, like they're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I'm writing on them. I'm with you. I'm so
Yeah.
with you.
And for other people, it might be sitting just quietly in meditation or just quiet time. It might be listening to music. It might be listening to mantras or affirmations. It might be going for a walk and touching the trees. Like whatever that is for you that creates those micro moments. And for me, I don't know if you can see it behind me, but the memoir that I wrote that chronicles that 7-year period is called Digging for the Light, One Woman's Journey from Heartache to Hope. It's what I call a reflective memoir because it doesn't just talk about all the crap that happened. It shares like that excerpt of some of the things that made me laugh during as I was writing in the journals, and I shared those moments. I shared the questions, the thoughts, the hopes that helped me to move forward. And on the surface, it might look like, oh, it was easy. It was not easy. It was messy. I mean, it was so messy, and it was like truly, it's cliche, but it was like a roller coaster
Sure,
of
sure. I could imagine
emotions.
that.
And there's, coming back to your question, what could I offer our guest if they're going through a hard time now or in the future? Is, for me, hope was a big thing. It was this inner belief that there was something better was possible. And it was not just possible for other people, it was possible for me, and it was possible for all of us. And there's a mother-daughter team that run the Open to Hope Foundation. It's Dr. Gloria and Heidi Horsley.
Mm-hmm.
And one of their taglines is, if you're having a hard time finding your own hope, lean on ours. And I don't have that exactly like they say it, but lean on our hope until you can find your own. And I often share that because I think it's so meaningful. And that's a
100%.
part of the global community, right? Sometimes we feel like we just aren't going to get through. And I went through a divorce that I never wanted, and it was painful and it was excruciating. And let's just say my spouse and former spouse and I had different opinions and viewpoints on how to navigate something like that. And I had 3 friends who literally were like my lifelines. I literally say, because I felt like I was in the bottom of a pit and I had no way to dig or claw my way out. And I just felt I would climb and climb and climb, and it was so exhausting. And what I imagined in my mind, what it felt like, because when I thought, okay, there's no end, and what just happened, like, how could something like that happen, in the divorce? I couldn't wrap my brain around it. And I would call them, one of them. And what I say is they had dropped a rope and they were at the top, and I would climb. And when I would get so exhausted that I thought, I just can't go another minute. And they were like, we've got you. Just hold on. You just hold on to the rope and rest. You don't have to climb right now. We've got this, and we're holding you. And that was so, find somebody who is your lifeline or community.
Community. That is what I'm thinking of, the power of community. As
Mhm.
for so many people, you would leave your home and you go to build a life somewhere else.
Mhm.
And depending on the way that your life has been curated, that support may not necessarily be there. When you're facing, what you're describing, I certainly not familiar with those exact emotions, but
Mhm.
but going through similar experiences and feeling like, wow, like I have to reach up to touch bottom. Like, how have I
Mhm.
gotten to this place?
Yeah.
And I am really curious to know, because now there's a continuation of, or a different version of pain, right? How do you not slide into that negative self-talk? And what did you do? And maybe it was your friends that were able to help, that supported you out of it. Did you feel more evolved as you were going through your divorce in particular, after everything else that you'd endured before that? Did you ever feel like, oh, you were teetering there? Again, just trying to give people tools
Mhm.
where they're like, why is this happening to me? Because I hear that so many times. For me, I would often say, for a lot of the challenges, I was like, well, all right, this muscle has been flexed a little bit more. I feel a little bit stronger, but still it is misery and it's hell to go through it. So when you have experienced these now, essentially, for lack of a better term, back to back, how did you feel as though you were prepared in any kind of way? It's like, all right, okay, I've been through something else before. Like, what was your personal journey, and like, how do you support people who feel like, my goodness, I can't believe I'm getting hit again?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, what I'm being guided to share is there is no universal loss hierarchy.
Also true.
So the divorce was no better or worse than my son's death. The affair was no better or worse than my son's death, other than what I assigned it. And I don't want to go too far off tangent, but there is it's been passed down for decades, statement that child loss is the worst loss. And I was introduced to that after Gavin died. And so what happened is subconsciously I adopted, like, Anna, you've gone through the worst possible thing a human can experience. So the rest of life is going to be easy.
Exactly. Right.
It's
Right.
going to be a
Okay.
walk in the park. Now, flash forward 7 years later, I discovered the affair between two of the most important people in my life. And what happened is I found myself in this position of, why am I crying over spilt milk? So I was beating myself up because that loss felt as significant as the death of my son. And so I was having all of this inner turmoil and conflict around that. And one of the things that I say, and I've said for decades again, and I've worked and connected with thousands of people in all different times of their life of struggle, and they all say it's the worst. Cancer diagnosis, it's the worst. Estrangement from my children or from my parent, it's the worst. Losing your job, it's the worst. Financial collapse, it's the worst, right? I mean, truly, every single person who is experiencing a significant life loss event, it's the worst. Children, grown children, but who are taking care of aging parents and navigating that, it's the worst. I've heard it in every single scenario that you can imagine. And so if it feels the worst for us, it is. So that's the first thing that I would share with people, is there is no comparison. And comparison it's one of the things that I talk about. It's actually one of the first components in the 5 Facets Philosophy of Healing coaching program that I do, the transformation program. And who is it that said comparison is the thief of joy?
Yes, indeed.
I think it was Roosevelt, but
I cannot remember, but I'm well familiar with that saying.
Quote me. And I say it is the thief of joy and your potential. Because when we're in a state of comparison, we know comparing to other people in other situations. There are 2 other forms of comparison that I talk about that aren't talked about often. But when we are in a state or place of comparison, typically it's coming from somebody has something that I don't. So I'm lacking. And we're not lacking. It's just the details of what we all possess, own, have within us is different. And so how do you put to work for you what you have, the resources that you have? The initial question.
No, but it does, because it segues perfectly into an emotion that a lot of my viewers experience, or the fear of it is too late. Yeah. For many, they're in their 50s, 60s. You're like, is it too late? It is too late. The good years are gone, all of these things. And I'm just like, absolutely not, because the longer that you've been on this journey, the more knowledge you have,
Right.
the more valuable the experience that you have. For so many people, I would talk to, and just to be clear, I am very much a proponent of education. I am not anti-education, but every single time I would hear a person with 20, 30 plus years of experience speaking about, oh, I need to go back to school or I need to get this course. And I was just like, you have the most valuable education of all, and that is life and experience. Because when we all got out of college, right, and we were struggling to get that job, what is the first thing that they would always tell you? And the reason that you can't get it, it is because you don't have enough experience. And so many people devalue lived experience and they think it's too late. I would love to have you just share like your own thoughts on that, because it's too late, therefore I can't, or therefore I shouldn't. And I did have the privilege of just randomly sitting on a flight to Canada several months ago when a relative was near end of life. She was actually also going to see a relative that was in the same position. And I was sharing with her, the challenges that I realized that my audience had, which is that it's too late. And she was 50, either 57 or 58, and sharing that she had always had this desire to go back to school to do, I think, to become a therapist or something like that. It was genuinely not experience that she had, and she realized, okay, in this case, this was not just shifting lived experiences. It's something that she didn't know, but she always wanted to do. And she said, yes, I get it, because at this point, seeing people passing around her, it was serving a two-prong approach. It was almost opposite. Should I bother? Because suppose like this was all for nothing anyway, or should I actually do something because the time is limited? And it was that so I'm really curious to hear what your perspective would be for those people who do feel that it's too late, and why should I bother?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's kind of two questions. One, it ties back into your question about starting over, feeling like we're starting over. And really, in my experience, and I've heard other personal development people talk about it, we're not starting from scratch. We're starting from experience.
Exactly.
And so we're bringing to the table all of the knowledge and the wisdom and the learning and the insight that we have gained through prior experiences. And we're able to use that. And what I say, I used to wonder, there was a point during that 7-year period, I was like, why? Why am I facing this again? Did I fail the first time? And literally what I discovered, it's not that we failed. We haven't failed. We're now adding, when we rub up against a similar conflict or struggle, we're now adding depth and dimension to the learning that we've already done. So that's the first piece. The second piece was, is it too late? And my personal belief is it's never too late. We're like, oh my gosh, I missed your birthday. Oh my gosh, and now I can't. And it's like, to me, it's always a good time to celebrate somebody. It's always a good time to let somebody know you're thinking about them. It's always the perfect time to support yourself, or to try something new, or to do something that lights you up from the inside out. And it was Henry Ford, I'm pretty sure, who said, if you think you can't,
Thank you.
then, and I'm going to end up butchering this again. If you think you can't, then you can't. And if you think you can, then you can. So if you think you can't do something,
right,
the likelihood is that you're not going to be able to accomplish it. If you think you can, the chances of you being able to accomplish what you set out to, or in some form,
yes,
that chance is greater. And that, to me, that comes back to hope and possibility and potential. If we believe that there's potential for something better, something greater for us, for the rest of the world, and we move from that place of curiosity and love. And one of the things that I did is when I first started, this modality started revealing itself to me, and ultimately all of the answers to those thousands of questions, I saw themes and patterns, and these 5 facets revealed themselves. And I thought, well, I don't have a psychology degree.
Right.
I can't. And this was more than 20 years ago. Now coaches are on every
Right.
every corner of the internet and every block, but at the time it wasn't. There were only a few people, and I was like, did a deep dive research. It's like, do you have to be certified to be a coach, to create a modality, to create something meaningful, to serve people? And finding out again what was not to restrict me, but to say, okay, what are my options? What do I have to work with? How can I move forward? Because I believe in this. And as far as the education, I just, within the last year, I think I read a 96 or 98-year-old woman had just graduated from college.
God bless. Wow.
And
Wow.
right. And so it's like that cliche, the world is your oyster.
Yeah.
It really truly is. And coming back to the title of your podcast, Live, Learn, and Leverage, right? The living is what we're doing. Learning is what we're gaining. It's the wisdom that we're gaining from those experiences. And I heard recently, wisdom is applied knowledge.
Sure.
So we're learning, we're then applying what we've learned in our life, which that growth then is going to help us leverage, again, what I call our next level potential. How to put to work for us our God-given gifts, the knowledge that we have, to leverage those resources to achieve what we want.
What was that tipping point that you had experienced when you're like, I'm called to do this? Like, this is what I want to do. That I can actually use all of this, not because that is an evolution on its own, you know. For much of what you have experienced, many people don't even want to speak about. A
Right.
lot of people have challenges speaking about it, much less building and curating um an entire a business, a brand, a calling, a purpose, and really realizing that I can serve. You know, one of the things that I share or during different sessions with clients is understanding what is genuine and real to you. I often say, you know, the more traumatic, unfortunately, that or just disturbing or whatever it is, the more challenging that experience is that you're going through, that you've overcome, it is likely that there are other people who are struggling through something similar. But unfortunately, because of oftentimes the shame or pain or whatever it is that is associated with that, and they're not able to speak about it, that's the reason that they don't want to come forward and support and help and guide and do all of those things. So what was that tipping point? What happened in your life that helped you realize, okay, I'm ready? Because the other thing that I often warn people about, especially when they're dealing with something that is very emotionally charged or could be very triggering, for lack of a better term, to individuals, is make sure that you're able to stand on your story and you're not in the emotional minors in it and just getting completely lost, because then everything would be lost, you know, you're not able to deliver. So yeah, what was that tipping point, and when did you realize, all right, I am at this place? I don't know if healing is the accurate word. Help me to understand if that is in fact correct, but I am at this place where I can share and everything that has happened I can now use to support the healing of others?
Okay, so that's a really big question. For me, and it might sound cliche, going back to I've always been a helper. Even as a little girl, I've always been a helper. I have a very pioneering spirit. I um I'm an introverted extrovert. So but people think, "Oh, I have some close people like, "Oh, you're such a natural at connecting with people." I'm like, "It's really if I'm in a group setting or networking, I really have to apply effort to stay grounded and connect and network." At my core though, I've just how can I show up and serve? And so I can't say that there was a tipping point. The the tipping point in how I wanted to really show up and serve people with through my in life in general was through my experiences. And that really kind of started forming when I realized that going back to the first affair that I discovered and wrestling with that. And then I was like, wow, we have been fed so many myths. There's so many things about loss, grief, and healing that aren't accurate, that are actually serving to hold us in conflict and grief. And so that was a tipping point for me to
The
realize that
realization.
I wanted to, one, give people hope. I
Right.
wanted to give people tools to tap into themselves, and I wanted to pioneer all new conversations. Now, that in and of itself was an evolution. Obviously, all of this was building, all of this was revealing itself. I was learning, evolving, growing, gaining that wisdom. And each time I was able to recognize, oh my gosh, I just healed a piece of my social facet. Wow, this is how it's showing up in my body. I can heal this piece of it. And so,
Right.
literally, piece by piece, I was creating those healing moments. And the more that I learned, then it was okay, now I'm going to broadcast this new depth of knowledge further and further out and share those messages. And ultimately, to start helping people know that there are, in the midst of these disempowering situations, because loss and grief are both unempowering,
Sure.
but healing is a choice. We get to choose when, where, how, what we want to work on, who we want to work on it with, which facet we want to address. We get to choose that. And anytime we have choice, it is empowering. So I can't say that there was a tipping point. And the other thing that I want to mention to what you said about some people, it's too painful. I don't personally believe that everybody needs or is built or wired or has the desire to serve people through their painful experiences or through their joyful experiences. We all show up to serve the world around us in different ways.
Sure.
And there are many people. So, grief is actually a response to some loss event. And in our culture, especially, but in many, we tend to marry loss and grief. And they're actually two autonomous they're two autonomous elements of our experience. And my work begins there at helping people reframe that. And for many people, sharing their experiences, they just have a preference to keep it to themselves. It doesn't mean that they're not able to heal. That's just their response is to be share it with a more select group of people. And I do encourage if somebody is struggling and it is hard for them to share, find a safe person, whether it's a friend, whether it's a counselor, a book, a
Yes.
community. I was on a podcast for parenting, and they wanted me to talk about community. And community can be a book resource.
Sure.
What is really identify what your community is. And I do believe that we all need people. People need people, so we're not in isolation. What is the way that feels the most right and safe for you to be able to enter into that community so that you can create those healing moments?
Thank you so much for sharing that about a book potentially being a community, because again, I have an international audience, and there are many people who have shared with me the struggle that they're having, which I mentioned earlier, because they're away from family and
Mhm.
they don't have that network. And unfortunately, because of that isolation, it is one of the reasons that they would have remained in that situation much longer than they knew that they should have. It also empowered the person that was caught, creating that difficulty and harm in their lives, because they knew that they didn't really have that network, that community, all of those things. That is a wonderful tool to hold on to. It's almost making me feel as though, to ask the question, do you have a list of books that you think are valuable to support people on the journey, yours included? I feel like I should probably list that on here. The fact that it's coming up in my being, I'm like, maybe that is something that I should add in the description. Like, if you would like more information, certainly I would have your information as well. But
Right.
would you happen to have book resources that may be helpful, or
Those
yes, no,
So
perhaps?
true story.
True story.
When
Yeah,
I
they put
lived
a true
in New
story.
York, my library was probably about 8,000 print physical books. And if you could see the space around me right now, there's a shelf behind me that probably has 100. Or I was like, oh, I pared that library down to like 200 or 300 books. And as I started unpacking them when I moved into my new place, I was like, oh my gosh, I have like over 100 books on this shelf right behind me. In front of me is another full shelf. I have two shelves in my bedroom that are full. And then in the living room, there are shelves that are full. And I also have an audio library. What I would say is the book recommendations, and when I'm working with clients that are going through my transformational program, as we're gaining insight into them, their processes, their facet structure, and learning more on a deeper level what they are experiencing that's holding them back towards their goals. So when somebody works with me, they set an intention for our 10 weeks together.
Right.
And even though the questions and the activities and the resources and the modules are the same for everyone, it all relates back to that question, their intention, and learning them. And so oftentimes a book, a resource will come to me that I offer them. It says, if it resonates with you, here's a book that is coming to me. So sometimes it is a personal development book or self-help
Mhm.
book. Sometimes it's a memoir. Sometimes it's a philosophical lens. Sometimes it's a nutritional lens. So depending on the facet that somebody wants to create healing in, those
Right.
books are going to be different.
Sure.
Sometimes it's
Understood.
a book through a spiritual lens.
Understood. And that does make that makes perfect sense, because I am an avid reader also.
Mhm.
In my apartment, I have many bookshelves. This one is like a joke. And that is, trust me. But
Yeah.
just like in the bedroom, there's shelves. In the living room, there's shelves. It's like how many shelves? At the library, shelves. So yes, I cannot pass by a bookstore and not read, but you're and not walk in. But you're totally right. It depends. And I have reread books or re-listened, because again, as a dog mom, I'm walking continuously with her. So I am listening. And depending on where I am in my life, and the evolution. If I am revisiting something, I'm receiving it differently. I'm hearing it with different ears. And the experience of it is totally different because the place that I am in now is very different than when I read it, 5, 10, 15, 20 odd years ago.
Right.
I just reread a book. It took me all of like 5 hours, and I had not right here of Florence Shin, that was written like 1925, one of those original metaphysics books. And I read that initially in I was given that book in 2003,
Oh,
23 years.
wow.
And I was just like, oh, the whole thing just, it sat so differently. I was like, yes, my evolution, my life is completely different. And so the lens of change and the lens of everything, and I think we could go on for forever. But at this point, I would just thank you so very much for being here. I am sure that everything that you have shared has provided tremendous value. Can you please let our listeners and viewers know where they can reach you? And I would certainly provide that information in the description, and your programs and things along those lines. Please share with us.
Oh, yes. Thank you. The best place is Anna, and Anna, as you see on the screen, Anna has an H at the end. So it's AnnahElizabeth.com. That has all of my services. There's a blog there. I write regular posts around a whole range of topics to support people. And then the socials, I'm pretty active on Instagram. You can find me, my YouTube channel. I'm building out more content on my YouTube channel. I say we're all neighbors.
Wonderful.
Whether you and I are neighbors, even though we're several states apart, people in Europe, we're neighbors. And so I call these my neighborhoods. So I'm on LinkedIn, YouTube and Instagram are the two that I'm most active, and then Facebook. But if you join the neighborhood by subscribing to the newsletter, I send out twice a week, not twice a week, twice a month, an email. And I also include community resources of different people that I've encountered with, so that other people are getting exposure. And who knows, somebody that's following something is going to register with them. Sometimes it's books, sometimes it's podcasts, sometimes it's another coach or a healer. I just trust that whatever shows up. So join the neighborhood wherever you are, and yes, sign up for that newsletter. I don't flood people's inboxes. I send those 2 emails a month because I know how it is. Our inboxes now are like our old mailboxes used to be.
Right, that is true. Stacked. And just to be clear, all of your handles are the same, Annah Elizabeth?
Yes. On Instagram and YouTube, it's Annah Elizabeth Heals.
Okay.
On Facebook, it's Annah Elizabeth Heal Grief. And on LinkedIn, it's Annah Elizabeth. Thank you for asking that.
Absolutely. I want to be sure that you're connected with, because you have so much valuable knowledge and experience. So thank you so very much for sharing that. Thank you for being here. And guys, as always, I hope this message serves. If you have any questions, you're able to connect with Anna in the description below, and certainly ask questions, comments. We'll read them all. Have a fantastic day. Take care. And thank you again for listening to another episode of Live, Learn, Leverage. Bye-bye.
Yes, be well.